Good morning. We begin with major breaking developments in Hong Kong. The head of the government, the chief executive, Carrie Lam, is unexpectedly bending to the will of protesters who have turned her city into a battleground for the past 3 months, formally withdrawing the extradition bill that brought hundreds of thousands and indeed at times millions out into the streets. The co-host of The National, Adrian Arsenault, is in Hong Kong, and Adrian leads off our coverage today. Adrian, I'm going to play, if you'll stand by with me, we just got from Carrie Lam her pre-recorded announcement that broadcasters there have aired, and we have some of it, which we're just going to play, and then we'll come right back to you for the translation of what she's announcing. But here is Carrie Lam from just moments ago.
持續出現嘅暴力正動搖香港法治嘅根基，極少數人挑戰一國兩制，衝擊中央政府駐港機構。
Okay, no translation of that on screen. That's the pre-recorded announcement from Carrie Lam. Adrian, you do have a translation of what she's just announced there in Hong Kong. What is she doing?
Okay, Heather, our team here has been listening to this. We have a running translation. We also are in the middle of a Telegram group, so accessing the views of some of the protesters and the democracy activists to see how this is flying with them. So she said four things are about to happen. Yes, that bill, the extradition bill, will officially be withdrawn. Remember, that word, withdrawal, is extremely important. Initially, she said it was suspended and it was dead. That didn't stop the protesters. They needed to hear that it was completely going away. She said, secondly, they'll fully support the work of an independent police complaints council. Does that satisfy their demands for an independent inquiry into the police brutality? No. What we're hearing from the protesters is that offer of a police complaints council, that doesn't do it. She said starting from this month, she and other officials will meet with citizens and communicate. Okay, is the response we're getting so far, but that's not what they were looking for. She also says they'll work with scholars to work on a report and investigate this issue. That doesn't do it either. Broadly, what we're hearing from people is they're happy that the bill has been withdrawn. It was an important step. As you said, this is what kicked off all of these demonstrations. But the violence of the past several weeks, the perception on the part of the people of Hong Kong that the Hong Kong police were so aggressive, they really want some accountability for that. Will this mean that people stop going to the streets? Some people will say, that's it, you know, we've had an effect, we're done, we're happy now. But there is a hardcore group who say, no, you know, we've had a taste of what it's like to push. We're getting a bit of a result and we're not done.
So, a start, not satisfied, and unlikely based on the early reaction you're getting to bring an end to the violence that and the protests that have grown in violence over the past 13 weeks. And yet, the significance of this, when she has been adamant that she would not take the step of withdrawing this legislation, just how major a concession should we view this as, Adrian?
I think there are a couple ways to view this. The first thing people looked at here is what's the stock market doing, and it soared almost up to 4% on just the hint that this was about to happen. So it's that scene immediately is taking some pressure off. Also, this has been a terrible week for Carrie Lam, a terrible 13 weeks, but this one in particular, because there was that audio recording of her leaked a few days ago where she was speaking at what she thought was a private event and saying, look, if I could have, if I had the choice, I would quit, making it very clear she had no control, that Beijing was pulling all of the strings. So now it's very clear, having said that this was not her call, this was Beijing's call. So why would it do it? It cannot continue to tolerate the scenes that have been occurring here in Hong Kong. Beijing views this as potentially an infection that might spread. It doesn't want to see that happen. It doesn't want the world to see the perception that it's losing control. The 70th anniversary of the party is being celebrated by China on October the 1st. It needed that to stop. And also, President Trump tweeted a few weeks ago that perhaps the favorable trade deal was in the works for China if China could help to calm this down. Maybe that was an incentive. So Carrie Lam may have done this to try to preserve the perception of her position in Hong Kong. Beijing may have done it to try to preserve the peace and its economy.
Adrian, thank you very much. Beginning our coverage right there in Hong Kong with Adrian Arsenault, of course, one of the hosts of The National. He'll have ongoing coverage of this today, and we'll also get the perspective from Beijing later on our program from our Asia correspondent, Sasha Petrusik. So much more to come on this breaking development as Carrie Lam announced that they will, in fact, withdraw the extradition bill, which has been the touch point, the touchstone for all of the violent protests that we've seen play out in Hong Kong of late.